Something unexpected took place in the middle of a completely deserted bog, which was once a stronghold of wild boars that could not be approached. During the time that the herd was frozen in place in the muck, a team from a helicopter emerged in the sky. Moreover, everything shifted when the cannons began firing their weapons. Due to the difficult and hazardous terrain, the swamp that was in front of us was a dense area that was full of moss and muck. It was a location where humans rarely set foot due to its complexity. The region has been in a state of relentless attack for some months. Footprints, calves that were not present, and massive footprints that were buried deep into the muck. It was then that strange signs started to arise. A small number of wild boars were roaming around in the swamp, leaving behind lengthy, slick trails on the surface of the murky water. Due to terrible circumstances, a few of them had become entangled in the deep muck. Recognizing that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, we promptly deployed our forces and approached the objectives from a number of different directions. However, any terrestrial approach would have been far too risky due to the treacherous terrain. At that time, the only solution was to launch an assault from above. Helicopter flights of helicopters started to take off. The strategy for the aerial strike was implemented quite quickly. Despite the fact that the aircraft was armed with long-range weapons, my comrades and I decided to board it as quickly as possible. While the chopper was flying above the top of the trees, the view was open, and I rotated each section of the swampy environment so that it was facing the opposite direction. Almost immediately after that, we came across a herd of wild boars that had gathered together and were digging furiously in an attempt to find anything hidden beneath the heavy layer of muck. They were absolutely taken aback, and they chose to ignore the fact that, from above, my crew and I had our fingers crossed on the trigger, waiting for the command to fire. Despite the fact that my heart was thumping frantically, my hand stayed still. The target had been secured. The hit with pinpoint accuracy started. In response to the initial round of fire from my comrades, I promptly took position and locked the next target in my visor. In the game Counter-Strike, the wild bullets ran around in the mud in a disorganized manner, producing a scene of complete and utter anarchy. I am the one who pulled the trigger. It only took a few seconds for the animal to pass out as a result of the precision shots. As a result of the counterattack, one wild boar after another fell to the ground. In response to the reverberation of bullets, the marsh appeared to shake. Each and every one of them was not given any opportunity to flee from us. Together with my teammates, I was able to coordinate our efforts without any difficulties, identifying and eliminating each member in turn. When I looked through the scope, I watched the final one begin to freak out and make frantic attempts to flee, but it was already too late. As a result of our formation from the skies, all escape routes had been barred. No longer was it a pursuit of anything. As a form of punishment, it was deliberate. Within the context of the counter-strike, we were aware that each shot brought us a little bit closer to securing the ground. Would you have been able to respond as swiftly as we did if you were the one who was in charge of this chopper and carrying the gun? In the comments section, specify a number 1. A further herd of wild boars, even more numerous than the previous one, had just been observed by other members of the team moving stealthily along the forest meadow to the west. I did not hesitate to turn my eyes in this way, and I started sweeping the scope in that direction. In point of fact, a herd of wild boars was slipping through the bushes in an effort to flee the area where the fight was taking place. Almost instantly, it shifted its formation and accelerated with the intention of approaching the opposing side. During the time that the chopper was decreasing altitude, I was able to experience a noticeable increase in my pulse rate. Once more, the targets came into view, and a few seconds after that, the sounds of gunfire could be heard echoing through the air. In spite of the screaming rotors, the herd had not yet become aware of the threat that was coming from the upward direction. As a result of the rotors becoming flattened, the mud was thrown into the air, and the animals plummeted one by one. No longer was it a pursuit of anything. The intuitive response of people who are overly familiar with the battlefield was taken into consideration. We continued to extend the sweeping area near to the swampy layer because it was where the wild bullets frequently hid during the day. Once the swampy area was secured, we continued to do so. The helicopter descended to a lower height and moved slowly with the purpose of exploring the region. When that happened, a herd of wild boars suddenly materialized in the midst of the turbulent air, and they were looking for something that was lying on the ground. Because we all went into position at the same time, there was no need for an order to be given. I pulled the trigger, and the very first shot caused the air to be ripped apart. This caused the herd to flee in a state of fear, but the terrain was so clear that they were entirely exposed. Within a few seconds, the subsequent salvo was able to eliminate the majority of them. The only sound that could be heard was the icy reverberation of resolute action emanating from on above. It was clear that the bullets had been utterly destroyed. I witnessed 3 wild bulls moving away from the herd in a completely silent manner and walking in the opposite direction. This occurred in the distance, when everything appeared to be in a state of tranquility. Not like the others, they were not in a state of panic. It appeared that they were seeking for a separate exit for emergency situations. Instantaneously, the helicopter altered its path, maintaining a distance that was sufficient to avoid drawing their attention. We proceeded to follow each of their motions while simultaneously lowering our altitude and maintaining a consistent speed. One of them stood out due to its imposing size, and it was most likely the only alpha member of the group that was still alive. After they had entered the ideal shooting range, the subsequent wave of punishment was immediately unleashed without any moments of hesitation. We no longer have the opportunity to cause destruction. It is a rule that cannot be changed. My crew and I went to a different location, leaving the boom of the rotor blades behind us as we walked. Cornfields, in the northern part of the swamp, had been reduced to bare stems and muddy soil by the time the swamp was over. Wild boars had erupted, shredding each new cornstalk that had just started to develop because they were so excited. In the span of a single night, all of the laborious efforts of the peasants had vanished. That they were moving in vast coordinated herds was demonstrated by the fact that they left deep traces of soot that spread to the border of the forest. Not only did the harvest suffer, but the spirit of the people also suffered. Currently, the people who reside there are living in a state of continual discomfort, and they jump at the least disturbance in the middle of the night. Indicate in the comments section that you are still watching the video by writing a 0. They hastily retired into the dense forest, which they regarded to be their secure domain, after they had sown the seeds of chaos. My team and I came to the conclusion that we could not allow them to continue to flee in such a manner, so we decided to extend the pursuit. When it came to this particular hunt, it would take place deep within the jungle floor. As we moved further, we were accompanied by hunting dogs that had been trained by experts who are highly sensitive to sniffs. As soon as they detected even the tiniest odor that was unfamiliar to them, they veered off into the narrow paths of the forest. The entire crew sped up to continue following them without waiting for an order to do so. Short, high, and packed with warnings, the gunfire started being fired. We were aware that the target was getting nearby. Immediately in front of us, a small clearing appeared in the heart of the wilderness. When we finally caught a glimpse of them, we noticed that the grass was passing through and the ground was spreading out. Due to the fact that we did not have enough time to think, I prepared myself and then pulled the trigger. The initial shot of fire reverberated, shattering the state of silence. The remaining members of the BS made an attempt to flee, but the dogs had already gone around to prevent them from escaping. Rapidly, the group expanded the perimeter of the area. The conflict in the jungle had started for real. Instantaneously, we ducked down and clenched our weapons in response to the commotion that was occurring in front of us. As they stared intently at the dense woodland plot in front of us, the hunting hounds grumbled and their eyes became even more strained. Suddenly, a troop of wild boars emerged from where they'd been hiding behind thick bushes. Within a moment, they were gone. In a split second, the air became denser. Our group instantly separated, and each member found a secure location from which to fire. A rustle was produced by the lead bullets, and then they loaded in a forward direction. I pulled the trigger, I said. In the woods, the sound of gunfire could be heard. After a few moments, the entire crew started firing at the same time for the first time. The branches and foliage were ripped apart by the gunfire. There was a brief but eerie conflict that took place, and the sound of the gunshots mixed with the cries of the bullets. Some people attempted to flee, but the circle had already closed by that point. The hunting dogs surged forward, driving the herd in the direction of our co-workers who were waiting. Every shot was under control. No one shot in a reckless manner. Following the reverberation of the final volley of fire, there was a return to silence. As we walked through the forest, the leaves continued to shake, and the ground under us retained the heat that had been caused by the gunpowder. No exclamation was made. Rather, there was only a quick exchange of stares. Despite the fact that the hunt had not yet come to an end, the subsequent herd was still waiting somewhere in the dense woodland.